This week you're going to be starting your next paper, which is the rhetorical analysis. As you may remember from the first week, rhetoric is the art of persuasion. So for the rhetorical analysis, you're going to analyze an author's rhetoric. You're going to analyze how well they persuaded their primary audience. For this paper, the basic guidelines are MLA format, so Times New Roman 12-point font, double spaced with 1-inch margins. You want to have at least 5 sections total, including an introduction and a conclusion. You want to talk about ethos, pathos, and logos, and you can do it in whatever order you want to. I also want you to do a works cited entry. Some of you probably haven't done works cited before or haven't used the most current MLA requirements. So I'm going to show you where you will go to find out the formatting. And the place you will go is the Purdue OWL. That's what it's called, the Purdue OWL. And you will find it here at owl.english.purdue.edu. You can also just Google Purdue OWL MLA and you'll find it. So you'll come to this website, you'll look up the works cited requirements, and along this side, you'll choose the right kind of source that you're going to be citing. For this paper, you're going to be citing a book. So I'm on the book page, and you will cite it like a work in an anthology. So this is the formatting that you'll use for your works cited page. I'm not going to go over that in any more detail because we'll be doing that a lot more later in this class. But if you are really having a hard time and you can't figure out this works cited formatting for this paper, please email me and I will email you back with all of the answers to your questions. Okay. So those are the basic guidelines. I'm going to also do a quick genre study. You'll do a genre study like this for our next paper. So how is this assignment similar to what I've written in the past? Well, we just got finished writing a personal narrative. That is very different in a lot of ways. Personal narrative, you're telling a story, you're telling about your personal experiences, whereas the rhetorical analysis, you are not giving any of your personal experience. You are only talking about the text that you're analyzing. In a personal narrative, you're going to use a lot of pathos. You are using heavily charged words that are meant to draw your audience in and get them to relate to you. In a rhetorical analysis, you are using much less pathos and a lot more logos. You really want to do a good job with your logic in this paper. However, there are some things that are similar. You want to have good organization. You want to still be aware of the type of language that you're using. You want to use interesting grammar choices by varying your sentence structure, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. As far as your tone, there's one thing that I do want to kind of dispel that a lot of students think. They've been told in the past, don't ever use first person in an academic paper. And there's a reason that teachers say that. Students, a lot of times when they use first person, they tend to talk about their feelings or about their personal experiences. And if you're doing that for a research paper, you are breaking the genre conventions. In a research paper or a rhetorical analysis like this one, you don't want to talk about those things. But this is where I'm dispelling the rumor, I guess. You can use I. There's nothing wrong with the word I, especially if you are saying, in this paper, I will demonstrate that the article that I am analyzing has done a good job with ethos, pathos, and logos or something. So you can use I in that way. You won't use it very many times in a rhetorical analysis or a literature review or research paper, but you can use it sometimes, and if you're using it in that way, that's fine. If you did your own personal research, which original research, like you did your own experiment, you could use I when you're describing your experiment. First, I gathered my subjects, then I performed this test. That you won't be doing that for this class. Another thing to remember is that in some other classes, particularly in the sciences, your professor may not want you to use the word I. Even though it is considered perfectly acceptable in many academic settings, that is something that you might want to ask another professor about in the future. So you can use I, but you do want to stay professional. You want to do a really good job with your grammar, and you want to be very careful with your organization. What skills do you have that will transfer easily to this paper? Well, you have been working on some interesting grammar and like syntax constructions. So we wrote those different forms of sentences. That's something that you can bring to this. So even though the subject matter is kind of dry, you can spice up your paper by using a variety of sentence structures or by using descriptive language. Some of you may come into this paper saying, I'm really good at organization, I'm really good at doing analysis. Or some of you may say, I need to learn more about this. Hopefully you will say, oh, I know what a rhetorical situation is. I know what the rhetorical appeal of ethos is. I know what the rhetorical appeal of pathos is. So hopefully those are skills and background knowledge that you already have. You can obviously do more work to learn those things. And I'm going to give you some tools so that it is easier to write this paper. And for just a second, I want to discuss about the point of writing a paper like this. Some of my students in the past, and I expect some of you will feel this way, will say, I'm not going to write anything like this ever again. You might have also said it with our last paper. And honestly, all of the genres that we write in during this class, you may never use them again. That's partly why we do the genre study. If you learn to think when you approach a new genre, okay, what are the conventions of this genre? What skills do I have that will help me complete this writing task? If you can do that kind of mindful approach to writing, you will realize that you have skills from a certain genre that transfer easily to new writing tasks. And so there are things to learn regardless of the genre that you're actually writing in. Another reason is I think it's absolutely essential that students learn to approach especially college subjects without bias. So, for example, in this rhetorical analysis paper, you are not going to anywhere in the paper agree or disagree with the author's main point. That would be one of the worst things you could do for this paper. This paper has nothing to do with your personal response or whether or not you think the author was right. This paper is all about you recognizing the strategies that they used to draw in their primary audience. And for many of you, you may not be in the primary audience for these articles. Some of them you are part of the primary audience. And so it's also an important skill to be able to get out of that normal mindset that you have where you think everything is all about you. It's important to be able to think, okay, for different people who have different experiences or who have different type of education or life situations from me, how would this have affected them? So those are some of the important skills that you will practice during this paper. It'll also give you an opportunity to practice things like organization, introductions, conclusions, so actual like bare bones writing communication skills that you will practice during this paper. So those are some of the reasons that I think the rhetorical analysis is an excellent paper. Another reason is I think it is a great opportunity to see the good things that other writers are doing. A couple of weeks ago, you would have read the Reading Like a Writer article, and you would have thought, oh, when I'm reading, it's not just about the content, it's also about recognizing another author's strategies or another writer's strategies so that I can emulate them. Perhaps you will notice, wow, this person had really great logos, or they organize their paper in a really interesting way that I would like to do in the future. So this paper is also a good opportunity to practice analyzing somebody else's writing strategies so you can incorporate their techniques into your own writing. Okay, so here is a brief overview of how you should structure your paper. You're going to start with your introduction. The introduction is a really important place to show awareness of your audience and to explain why you think the topic of the article that you're analyzing would be important to them. You also, in that introduction paragraph, particularly for the rhetorical analysis, you want to give an overview of the rhetorical situation. What is the author's purpose? Who is the author? Who's the writer? What is the context that the article is placed in? Then you'll do your body paragraphs. In each body paragraph, I want you to give at least 2 examples straight from the text of how the author made a given rhetorical appeal. So you'll want to say, for example, you might want to say, this author has intrinsic ethos, and explain why their readership would believe them just because of their name. Or you might want to say, well, the author did a really good job of showing balance, and then give an example from the text. So each paragraph, you need to point to the text. You need to say, here's what the text does, and I'm going to explain to you why it worked for the primary audience. And then in your conclusion, you'll review your main point, and then you want to reconnect with your audience by emphasizing how the article topic relates to the big picture. So during the introduction and the conclusion of this, and actually any academic paper you write, it is a great opportunity to connect with your audience by mentioning how your topic relates to the bigger picture or relates to them in their world. Okay, some last tips. If you want to do a good job on this paper, read the assignment guide, read the ethos, pathos, logos explanation, and if you go to the rhetorical analysis button in Canvas where you would turn it in, and there's like a little explanation of what it is, and then beneath there's a rubric, and there are 3 examples you can look at that were very good, maybe not perfect, but very good examples from other students. Also, remember your audience. You're talking to us, you're talking to the other students in the class, and you're talking to me. So think, I don't want to bore these people, especially my teacher who has to read 20 of these. I want to say things in an interesting way. I can even use humor, maybe, or an interesting sentence structure or vivid language. And also, this is absolutely essential. Use the rhetorical terminology we've learned about so far. Some of the examples don't do this quite as well, but I want you to specifically say ethos, say pathos, say logos in your paper. I want you to say purpose. I want you to say rhetor. I want you to say genre. I mean, all of the terms that we have learned, when you talk about logos, I want you to talk about claims, reasons, and assumptions. Use all of this language that you know to make your paper better. So that's an introduction to the rhetorical analysis. Please contact me with any questions.